Everyone. Firstly, just wanted to say welcome to today's event. As Alex said, there's a lot of information and we're hoping that it'll be really useful for you. It's really useful for us actually, particularly with the questions that you provide for us, because it helps us to shape how we deliver information to you and give you relevant information. It's the information that you want. So it's really useful for us that we're engaging in this process. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for choosing the University of Hull and thank you for choosing to join us this morning. So my name is Gavin from the International Engagement and Compliance team. I'll be going through the presentation with Olga, and I will be mainly just doing slides. Fortunately, it's Olga that will be speaking to you, and she's much better than I am. So you will have the pleasure of listening to Olga for most of the time this morning. I will keep my input to a minimum, but I'll hand over to Olga now, and she can just introduce herself.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining in. Thank you for choosing the university. And yeah, my name is Olga. I'm one of the immigration advisors at the University of Hull. You will probably be tired of my voice and my face by the end of this presentation, but I hope that some of the information, or most of the information, that you will find useful.
Thanks, Olga. During the presentation, so when either of us are speaking to you or go through the slides, we'll be trying to answer as many questions as possible, as Alex said. So obviously you've got the opportunity to ask questions. So it's mainly been myself and Alex, but whilst we will try and answer everything, we're not potentially going to be able to answer absolutely everything. If you don't think you've had your question answered, please don't. You don't need to ask again. We won't have missed it. We'll take it away after the event and we'll get some answers out to you. So please don't panic. But hopefully what we're about to tell you will cover most of the things that you want to know anyway, if not everything. So we shall get started. Just a little overview to start with. We talked about ourselves as a couple of individuals, but as a team, we're the International Engagement and Compliance team. So what we do is basically we will support international students and applicants right throughout their journey of going from being an applicant through to a student and to post-study work options as well. That's essentially what we're here to do for the university. We work in a student services sort of field, so we're here to provide information to you. We'll support you, so whether that's support through your visa application as it is now, or when you arrive, if you have any issues that you may need to come and speak to us about. You may have some issues back at home that you would like to deal with. You might have family members that you want to bring over to the UK. All of that sort of thing is what we can help you with. We'll provide you with that support and guidance. We help with UK study related queries. We do get students asking us about visas for other countries, potentially if they're looking to move to somewhere else when they finish their course. We can offer very sort of vague sort of guidance, but we can only offer specific UK study related information. Keep getting that error message popping up, not sure why. Anyway, so yeah, but we can help signpost if it's something that we're not able to give proper support and guidance on. We'll talk to you about and give you information on your visa conditions. So when you're actually in the UK, what you can and can't do on your student visa, because it's very important that you don't do anything that you shouldn't be doing on your student visa. We're here to help you with that, to help you understand that. If there are changes to visa, so that either visa conditions or whether it's the UKBI have changed immigration rules and they may affect you, whether it's just before you come into the UK or whether it's whilst you're actually here in the UK, again, we can provide support for you in that sense. And as I said earlier, we can help you with post-study work or visa options. That might be as simple as you moving into the, you wanted to move into the graduate route visa. Again, that's something that our team would support you with. We're part of that process for applying for that, or whether it's moving into a work route, a skilled worker route, for example. We wouldn't be able to provide you with support on a one-to-one basis in terms of applying for that, but we are able to offer some support. We work really closely with colleagues in our Student Futures team as well, and they obviously do an awful lot with international students to try and create opportunities for our international students moving into the work field. So we do link up with them and do webinars with them as well, which talk about some of the options available. So we really do see international students right throughout their journey. We've just got a couple of bits of ways to contact us there. There is an email address, but ideally if you can contact us in your portal, if you can get used to using that, because that's the main sort of channel of communication when you're a student. If you just raise a visas and immigration query in your portal, that will come through to us. Olga, was there anything you wanted to add on that?
No, Gavin, thank you. You've covered everything, so then we can move on to the next slide.
So a question that, oh, actually, I've just seen one in the chat. Actually, I'll just say it now. It says, "Can we record the session?" The session is being recorded, so yeah, you don't need to worry about that. That can be shared afterwards. So one of the main questions we always get is, when will I receive my CAS? So we are starting to issue CAS now to people as long as they're ready. So when I say as long as they're ready, that means that they need to have provided all of the information in the documents that we've asked for as a university. So whether that's, so we would ask for evidence of qualifications, evidence of English language, if applicable. We would need to have that information before we can start thinking about issuing you a CAS. In some cases, we need further information, such as proof of funds, but that might depend on your circumstances. So we would, if we need to see proof of funds for any reason, and we do implement checks on those, not necessarily in every case, but we do that. So we wouldn't want to see those before CAS if we've asked you for that. So you would get, once you provided the information that we've asked for, you get a visa questionnaire from the admissions team. That's communicated through your portal, and you need to provide us information so that we can tell that you definitely need a CAS. In some cases, international students may think they need a CAS, but actually they've come into the UK on a different type of visa that means they don't need a CAS. So that's the idea of that visa questionnaire. So it's important you give us the correct information in that. We also ask about previous visa refusals. So we need to know about that, because that will allow us to offer you the correct support and guidance in terms of the next steps in the process. So it's important that you give us that information. Once you've completed the CAS or the visa questionnaire and we've determined that you need a CAS, you will get a draft CAS. So it's essentially one for you to check. It's not a proper one. It's not the one that you would use to go and make your visa application, but it's one that gives you an opportunity to check all of the information. So you need to check that your personal information is correct. Have we got the right name? Have we got the right spelling of your name? Is date of birth correct? Your passport, is that correct? Is it the current one? Have you changed it since you first applied? Have we got you down on studying the right course? Do the course dates look correct? Are they what you expect to see? If all of that information is correct and you're happy with that information, you can accept your draft CAS. At that point, that will be notified to the admissions team, and then they will be able to move ahead with issuing you a final CAS. The final CAS is the CAS that you will use to make your visa application. That will have the unique CAS number, which is what you will use for your student visa application. Just taking a step back again, when you get your draft CAS, if there are any of those things that are wrong, which I talked about before, you will need to tell us. We understand that students would like to get their CAS as soon as possible, completely understandable. However, there's no point accepting a draft CAS that you know is wrong, because it's only going to cause you delays down the line. So if you see an error with it, please notify our admissions team, reject the draft CAS and explain what the problem is. That's again all done through the portal, and they will rectify that CAS. So for example, we've put the wrong date of birth for some reason, it's been input incorrectly. You tell us that that's the case, we change it, we send you another draft CAS for you to look at, just make sure everything's okay, and you accept that. You will only ever get your final CAS when your draft CAS has been accepted. But it's important you don't just accept the draft CAS just because you want your final CAS as quickly as possible. So there are a couple of deadlines, and things are subject to change, but at the moment, the payment deadline for your deposit, if you need to pay a deposit, the 28th of July, and a CAS issue, so the last day we should be issuing CAS is the following week, so I think it's the 4th of August, and that's ahead of obviously September starts. Now, that is as early as the 4th of August, because we know that it can take time for students to make their visa application. Obviously, you've got to have all your documents ready, and they've got to be ready for a certain amount of time. Olga will talk about that shortly. But also, there's obviously UKVI have got to process your visa application. So we need to allow as much time as possible for that to happen, to give you sufficient time to arrive in the UK on or as close as possible to your course start date. Olga, anything else?
Thank you, Gavin. I just wanted to mention something about the questions. Please, when you ask the question in the chat, make sure you don't provide any personal details specific to your query. If you have any specific questions, please raise it separately in my whole portal after our webinar. Okay. And regarding this slide, what I wanted to talk about the visa implications of any changes that you might want to make now or in the future. So the student visa is tied to a particular university and a particular course. These are the UKVI, these are the immigration rules, and any changes to your personal or your academic circumstances have or may have visa implications. So what happens quite often, the international students arrive to the university, they find out about their course, different courses, and they think, oh, actually, I want to change the course. So changing the course, there is absolutely no problem with it from the kind of personal perspective or university's perspective. But what you need to bear in mind, from academic point of view, you need to meet the academic criteria for the new course. From the immigration point of view, because the visa that you have is for the course that you have the CAS for and you arrive to study for, you will need to change your visa. And unfortunately, you cannot change the visa inside of the UK. So that would mean you'll have to leave the UK, and if it's too late to start your new course, you'll have to defer and kind of wait for another year or for another point of entry. So change of program may have cost and time implication for you. So therefore, if you're not sure, if you're interested in a couple of courses, please check the website, check what the modules are, speak to the faculty, decide what you want to study, so that you don't have to change, or you don't need to change when you come here to study. That's it. Okay,
thanks,
ready
Olga.
for the next one.
Yeah, move on to the next one.
Yep.
And then, as promised everyone, I'm going to stay quiet for a bit now, and I'm going to hand over to Olga. But whilst I don't want you to think I'm not doing anything, I am going to try and answer some questions. So I'll hand over to Olga now.
Thanks, Gavin. Okay, so documents in support of visa application. This is the general list. The majority of you applying for the student visa from outside of the UK will need to provide these documents. Obviously, depending on your personal circumstances, you may need to submit extra documents or maybe less documents, depending on your nationality. Okay, so what you need, so the majority or most of you, all of you, when you make the visa application, you need to make sure that your passport is valid, and your passport should be valid at least until 31st of December 2023. And this kind of will, so if there are any delays in the visa application, you know that once you've started the visa process, you don't think to worry about your passport expiring. So I'm sure you all know when your passport expires. Check the date. If it's due to expire between now and August, September, please make sure, if it expires before December 2023, please make sure that you apply to replace it as soon as possible, because that could take time as well. If you apply to study with us on the basis of one passport and you're in the process of getting a replacement, please get the new passport first, send the copy to the admissions team to make sure that your CAS has the details of the new passport, the passport that you're going to use to make the visa application and travel to the UK. And this is because once you submit your visa application, UKVI will check the documents you submitted against the information on your CAS. And if there are any discrepancies, that will cause the delay, and quite often it causes refusals as well. So it's quite important that all the information is accurate. Apart from the valid passport, you need to make sure that you have your CAS number and the CAS statement. As Gavin mentioned previously, it's important that you check, don't rush. You've got the draft cast and you think, yes, I can accept it and apply for the visa, and that's it. Please don't rush. Make sure you check everything. Sometimes we're only human. We make a mistake on the draft cast statement. Sometimes the system pulls incorrect information. So please, you know your personal circumstances, you know the course you're studying. Check to make sure that the CAS, all the information on your CAS is correct, because this is the information that UKVI is going to check. Your CAS will have a section about the academic qualifications and about the English language certificates. And these are the documents that form the part of your unconditional offer. These are the documents that you provided our admissions teams with. So you have the PDF files, you have the originals with you. The UKVI will may ask you to provide the originals if they want to undertake further verification checks. We would need to see the originals when you come to the UK to enroll on your program, so please make sure that you remember to bring the original qualifications with you when you travel to the UK. Depending on your level of the course, if it's postgraduate program, and depending on the subject you're studying, you may need to undertake extra clearance and apply for the ATIS certificate. If you kind of thinking, oh, what's that? Never heard of it. Don't worry. Check your offer. If your offer doesn't mention ATIS certificate, that means you don't need it. If your offer mentions ATIS certificate, then you definitely know that you must have it. If you haven't applied for it yet, please submit the application as soon as possible, because ATIS certificates could take up to 4 or 5 weeks to be processed. The ATIS certificate is an online application, and it's very important that all the information you provide is accurate as well, because again, the mistakes, discrepancies, inaccuracies cause delays, and this will have a knock-on effect on your visa application. Depending on your nationality or the country of residence, you may need to apply for a TB certificate. It's quite easy to check. You can go online and check whether you reside or you live in the country that requires for you to do this TB test. With TB tests, obviously it's a busy time. A lot of international students are applying for this TB certificate. So it's important that you go through the test as soon as possible. In some cases, the test comes back inconclusive, or there are some areas of concern, so you will need to wait for a few months before you undertake another test, and that has a kind of knock-on effect on the whole visa application process as well. So please, if you haven't done it before, make sure, if you need one, apply for TB certificate as soon as possible. Both ATIS certificates, if you need it, and TB certificate, if you need it, once issued, are valid for 6 months. So if your course starts in September, you will all be applying for your visa within the next 6 months anyway. So please, if you haven't done so before, apply for TB certificate, obtain a TB certificate, apply for ATIS certificate if needed as soon as possible. Financial evidence, there is quite a lot to talk about it, and we'll cover it in 1 or 2 slides further down the line. And the extra documents that you might need to provide will depend on your circumstances. So for example, if you are national of one country, but studying or working at the moment in a different country, you will have a visa residence permit for that, and you will be applying from there. So you will need to provide the evidence of residence in the country you're applying from. If your documents are not in English, you will need to provide the official translations, and there might be some other extra evidence that you may need to provide depending on your circumstances. Okay, Gavin, is there anything you would like to add?
I'll just move on to the next one, Olga.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my least favorite slide, previous refusals and precast assessment of risk. So you might want to know why we're so nosy, our team. Why do we need to know, an admissions team, about your previous refusals? So there are quite a few reasons why we need to know about them. The previous refusals have negative impact on future visa applications. They also cause delays in visa processes. They sometimes kind of not make the UKVI often then calls the person who has previous refusals for credibility interview. It's almost like a kind of red flag for UKVI. They want to make sure that you are a genuine student, and so the previous refusals give them the kind of the cause for concern. The refusals have impact on your immigration history, but it also have negative impact on university as well, because university is your visa sponsor. So therefore, the reason why we need to know about the previous refusal, so that we can kind of assess your risks and our risks. And if there is a considerable risk of future refusal, then we will kind of we would like to make you aware of that. So you might need to change your plans, and in some cases it might not be possible for university to sponsor you for the student visa. Okay, so we're talking about the student visa, not about any other visas. Okay, so when you let us know about your previous refusals and send us a copy of the of it, we'll look obviously at the reasons for refusal, but then we'll look at the kind of the whole of the application, because if UKVI is to process your visa application, look at your kind of call you for the credibility interview. So we'll look at the personal statement, any discrepancies, any delays in you responding to us, any delays in you providing us with the information. And yes, then so for us to kind of assess the risks of any future refusals, basically. Gavin, is there anything else that I've missed and you would like to add?
Just that obviously we are asking about previous visa refusals, and as Olga said, it is really important that you tell us about them, and that's so that we can offer help. Now, as Olga said, maybe that we can't always then proceed with sponsorship depending on the circumstances, but we do need to know about it, because we need to be able to provide the relevant support to you. So it's really important that you tell us about them. It's absolutely not the case that if you tell us you've had a previous refusal that we won't sponsor you. Absolutely not. We've got the we've sponsored people who have had previous refusals. We've just had to provide very specific support to help them with their visa application. So it's categorically not the case that if you tell us about a previous refusal, we will say no, we're not going to sponsor you. It would very much depend on the circumstances, but it's so important you let us know for your sake and for the universities as well. That's all. I'll move on to the next slide.
I'll just, while you're moving on, I'll just add something as well, that if we ask for financial evidence, this is to make sure that obviously there are sufficient funds in support of your visa application, that it's held in the format accepted by UKVI. That's kind of to minimize that risk of a further refusal. So that's why it's important that you respond to our information request as soon as possible as well. Okay. So tips to avoid the visa refusal. So basically, it's kind of, we've mentioned it before, Gavin mentioned it before, I mentioned before, it's very important that the information on your CAS, on your visa application, is the same as on your documents, that there are no discrepancies. Please check your visa application again and again. Sometimes the cursor may move, sometimes there is a simple typo that could lead to kind of UKVI doubting whether you're a genuine student or not. So it's very important that all the information is accurate. The CAS could only be used once. So if your visa application is refused, you cannot use the CAS again. You just need to tell us, you must tell us if you apply for a student visa using our CAS and your application's been refused, you must tell us as soon as possible, rather than applying again and using the same CAS. The documents in support of your visa application, so all the information needs to match. We quite often have students whose previous qualifications have mistakes in their name or mistakes in their date of birth. It's very important that you go back to the university or the college who issued those certificates and ask them to correct the error. Your affidavit confirming that there are errors is not accepted by UKVI, because from UKVI point of view, affidavit is your personal statement signed in the presence of the court official. So it's kind of you are saying there is a mistake on the document. UKVI will not accept it as evidence. What they need is they need the kind of the document issued or reissued by the same body that issued the original certificate that bears the correct information. So check your qualifications, check all the details, and if there are any mistakes, please contact the institution that issued those documents and correct them. Okay. The visa, it's also important to follow the visa application process to avoid the risk of refusal. So you need to apply in good time to give UKVI a chance to undertake any verification checks, to give them chance to request further evidence if needed, and for the application to be processed in time for you then to obtain your visa and travel to the UK for your program start date. If there are considerable delays and you cannot make it for your program start date, then your plans may need to be changed. Okay, so it's important that you kind of, once you submit your visa application, it's important that you check first of all, it's important that the email address that you provide on the visa application is accurate. UKVI, if they need further evidence, they tend to contact the visa applicants by email. So it's very important that you check your emails on a regular basis, junk box, inbox. Don't miss the document request or further information requests, and provide UKVI with information as soon as possible on good time. Okay, UKVI may invite you for the interview, and I think we have a slide about the credibility interviews later, so we'll talk about it later this morning. Okay, we'll cover it in a different slide. Don't want to be carried away. Okay, the funds, it's very important. If you haven't received the CAS, you're all kind of anxious and worried. Where is my CAS? Where is my draft CAS? Where is my visa questionnaire? It will come. We need to process it. We need to undertake checks before it's issued. But there are other things that you could be doing in the meantime. Checking your passport, the validity date, making sure that you have TB certificate in place and ATAS if you need it. Thinking, about the money. Do I have the right money? Because money takes time to organize. So if you prepare everything else, your CAS could be that last piece of information. And hopefully when you receive the CAS, everything else is ready and you can submit that visa application, other than kind of the other way around. You get your CAS and then you start thinking, oh, where is the money? Now I need to wait 28 days to get my money in. Then I need to apply for TB certificate. So it will cause the delays in the whole visa application process. So please prepare other documents while you're waiting for your CAS. And in the meantime, if you have any questions to admissions team or to our team, contact us. And hopefully by then, once you have your CAS, it's good to go with your visa. And you can, if you have everything in place, if you have your CAS, you can make your visa application now. Okay, so we'll talk about funds and sources of funds in the next slide. Thank you, Gavin. Okay, so this webinar is about student visa applications outside of the UK. The documents that you need to provide, apart from TB certificate, are the same, whether you're applying inside or outside of the UK. The process is slightly different. So if there are any of you who are in the UK at the moment and are thinking of making your next visa application in the UK, please contact our team after the webinar and we can look at your circumstances and check whether you can apply in the UK. Unfortunately, it's not always possible to make your next visa application in the UK. So where to apply outside of the UK? You apply in your country of nationality or your country of residence if you're residing in a different country at the moment. For you to stay in the UK. So when you make the visa application outside of the UK, if your visa application is successful, and I hope it will be for all of you, you will get a sticker in your passport called Entry Clearance Vignette, that it's like a permission for you to travel and to enter the UK. Once in the UK, you will be able to collect the BRP Biometric Residence Permit, and you can choose where to collect it from, and Gavin will tell you all about it, I believe.
I will. So yeah, as Olga said, when you're going through your visa application, you get that choice of where to collect your BRP from. I would really urge all students to choose to collect your BRP from the university. There are a number of reasons for doing so, but one of the main reasons is that you can then collect your BRP from us as part of your enrolment. So obviously you come into the UK to study, and what's really important is that you get here as soon as possible, as close as possible to the course start date as you can. And you're going to need to enroll. You'll need to come and see our team so that you can be fully enrolled as a student. You get your student card and you're ready to go. You're ready to start studying. If you choose to collect your BRP from the university, you can do all of that at once. It saves you time. If you collect your BRP from the post office, you are going to have to go to the post office, collect your BRP. You're going to have to find where the post office is to start with. You're going to have to make sure it's open. They're not open all the time. You go and collect your BRP when they're open, and then you're still going to have to bring it to our team to complete your enrolment. So it's saving you a journey. Our BRPs are delivered to somewhere that is on campus and it's open 24 hours a day. Now that doesn't mean you can collect it from that venue 24 hours a day, because it's got to come from our team. But it just means that whenever there is a delivery attempted, they will be available for collection. So they will be received by someone within the university and they will looked after. They will be in a safe. The other issue is that unfortunately we receive a lot of BRPs, or students get BRPs where there are errors. So you may not get the correct length of time on your visa, or there may be some other mistake. It doesn't give you the correct work rights. We know what should be on your BRP. So when it arrives, we know whether it's correct or not. We know whether there are any mistakes. So if they start arriving early in the summer and you're not due to arrive in September, we can actually correct some of those errors by sending them back to or reporting them to the UKVI and getting new ones ready so that they're here by the time you get here, and you get your correct version. Now, in some cases, if it arrives just before enrolment, we wouldn't do that because we don't want it to be without the BRP. But a post office doesn't know what your BRP should say. All they're going to do is check who you are, they check your passport, and they will just give you your BRP. They're not going to tell you whether it's correct or not because they don't know. They just give you the document. We know whether it's right or not. And if you arrive at enrolment, your BRP's just turned up, we've not had time to do anything about it yet, we will go through the process with you of reporting it to the UKVI and getting a correct version. It's really important your BRP is correct and you've got the right amount of time on it, particularly for things like applying for a graduate route visa later down the line. So it's really important that you've got the correct entitlements on there. If you collect it from the post office, as I say, you are still going to have to bring it to our team anyway, and it's a lot of sort of backwards and forwards. Post offices in the UK are quite busy. You've got people trying to send letters and parcels and everything like that. You potentially going to have to go and queue there, collect your BRP, and then come and queue to see us as well. It just saves time. So please use the university to collect your BRP from. I will stop with that now. Hard sell. Hand back over to you, Olga.
Thank you. Thanks, Gavin. So remember the code, and this code will be on your cash statement as well that you need to enter for your BRP to arrive to us. Okay, the date of the application. The date of your visa application is the date when you pay the visa fee to UKVI, not the date you go for the interview, or not the date you go to bring your passport and other documents to the visa center. It's the day you pay your visa and your immigration health charge fee. And usually it happens at the time when you kind of complete your online visa application and ready to hit that button submit it, you'll need to pay for it. This is the date of your application. And on this date, before this date, you need to make sure that all the documents are ready. Your visa application needs to be perfect for you to kind of to not to suffer any delays and for the application not to be refused. So the date when you're ready to pay your visa fees, your financial evidence need to be in order. All the other documents, qualifications, everything needs to be in order. Don't think, oh well, I have 2 days for my funds to mature, I'll submit my application now. By the time I go to the visa application center, everything will be fine. Please don't do it. The day you pay the visa application, everything needs to be in order and ready to go. So the application is submitted online, but you're likely to will need to go to the visa application center to submit your biometric data and to take your passport and other documents to them. On your visa application, there is also a question about accommodation. So do you know where you're going to stay in the UK? Don't panic. If you don't know where you're going to stay yet, that's okay. You can say no, then there will be an extra section asking you, what your plans are. So if you're looking, so everybody's different, everybody's plans are different. If you're kind of considering your options, you can just mention it's a free text box that you're kind of looking at the accommodation, kind of the checking what's available, and we'll finalize your plans once you have your visa ready. And the reason, I mean, a lot of students are stressed and thinking that they have to apply for book university accommodation, that you need to provide the address on the visa application. If you know where you're going to stay, if you've made the arrangements, fair enough, enter the details, but do not enter into accommodation contracts if you're not sure that this is where you're going to stay. And this is because there might be a delay or issue with your visa. You might not be able to arrive on time. And the way it works in the UK, once you sign the kind of your tenancy agreement, your accommodation contract, you are bound by it. So even if you don't live at that address, you are liable to pay rent. So it's very important that kind of read, and in general, whatever contract or whatever agreement you are given, please read big letters, small letters, all the paragraphs, to make sure that you understand what it means before you sign or enter into the agreement. Even if you don't book the accommodation, it's important that you start checking online, or kind of talking to students, or asking kind of on live chat, talking to global engagement, to see what options are available. University accommodation, private student accommodation, private accommodation, depending kind of your requirements of where what you're thinking of staying. Check what's available, so that you know what to expect, requirements, costs, and you can kind of know what to expect, basically, and know how much to prepare and what to prepare for. Okay, right, this is it. Ready for the next one? Okay, finance. Right, so when we talk about the finance and how much you need to study in the UK, you have to think about 3 pots of money, if you like. So first of all, you need to be confident that you have enough funds to cover your study period in the UK. So that includes your course fees, your living costs, any kind of hobbies, interests, activities that you might be involved in. If you have dependents, then the extra dependent expenses, whether it's extra accommodation costs, food costs, nursery, uniforms, so for prescribed any medication, or if you need any dental treatments or your glasses, this is the extra money that you will need to pay. So it's make sure when you think about the budget, you budget those extra costs in as well. And and when you're thinking about this study port, you also you cannot think, oh well, I'll find the part-time job while I'm studying, so I'll be fine. So please don't make sure that you have enough funds without thinking of what you might earn while studying. And this is because you might not find the job straight away, or you might not find the job at all, or your course, you may find that the course demands, course requirements are so intense that you simply don't have time to work. So it's important that you don't put yourself under any extra financial stress, financial pressure, by not thinking and allocating enough funds to make sure that you can be stress-free when studying, finance stress-free. Okay, then another pot of money that you need to think about it is to make the visa application. So UKVI have certain immigration criteria when it comes to financial evidence. So they expect the international student applying to study in the UK, they expect that student to have access to enough money to cover well, they expect that student will have enough money to cover them for the whole period of study. But for the visa application, what they want to see is that you have enough money to cover the outstanding course fees and enough to live on for the next 9 months. If your course is shorter than 9 months, then enough for each month of your course. If it's longer than 9 months, then for the first 9 months, because they'll believe that you will have the rest of the money. So it's a big lump sum, it's a big sum of money. And we'll talk about in a different slide, kind of the requirements for this amount. Okay. The visa application fee, student visa and dependent visa application fee at the moment is £363 per person. If it could be slightly more or slightly less depending on the exchange rates, and depending whether you want to buy any extra services, kind of notifications or documents return, you may need to pay something extra. The immigration health surcharge at the moment is £470, and it's calculated not based on your course length, but based on your visa length. So if you're coming to study a course that is longer than 12 months, UKVI will grant you extra 4 months on top of your course period. So therefore, the immigration health it is immigration health charge. I'm getting confused here. So they will be calculated based on your period of stay in the UK. So for example, if you're coming to study master's program, September to September, your visa will be issued for 16 months until January 2025. Oh God, 2025. Yeah. So the immigration health surcharge will be calculated 470 per year, and then another 235 for this extra 4 months. So they'll charge it in chunks of 6, any extra period of time, 6 months. Okay. So please you'll need to make sure that you have this money, because the visa fee and immigration health charge, for you and for your dependents, you will need to pay at the time of your visa application. So if your course is 3 years, for example, so that it will be a lot of money that you will have to pay out there and then. And then there is another pot of money that you almost immediate access that you need to have available when you come here to enroll and to study. So depending on what course you are studying and your circumstances at enrollment, you will be required to pay a minimum of 34 to 50% of your course. If you're a master's student and paid 4,000 deposit, that would cover that first initial payment, and it will be followed by the further 1 installment depending on your course. You will also need access to some money to cover your accommodation and the immediate living expenses. So make sure if you're bringing the card, that you can use that card in the UK to access the funds, and while you're waiting to open a UK bank account and transfer the money. So all those things you have to think about as well before you when thinking about the visa application process, and also planning your arrival here. Kevin, is there anything you would like to add?
No, not from me, thank you. I will move on.
I'm really sorry that we'll be talking about money again. Okay, so the financial evidence. UKVI is very picky, a lot pickier than university, believe me. So what they want to see from you, they would only accept personal bank statements, not company bank statements, from you or your parents. So if we often get the questions, can one of my siblings, can I rely on their bank statements, or can my friend or my employer sponsor me? They can't sponsor you, but they will need to transfer the money that they're willing to give you to your personal bank account, and then you need to wait for that money to mature in your bank account before you can use it in support of your visa application. But obviously that money needs to be available to you, not just for your visa application process, but through your whole period of study, just to make sure that you're not under any financial pressure. UKVI, the banks that UKVI not like you like, but kind of the would like to see you keep your money in. It's the banks that they're regulated by the financial regulator, official financial regulator in your country, and these are and also the banks that rely on electronic record keeping, and because this is make it easier for UKVI to undertake verifications checks. If UKVI is unable to undertake financial checks, verification checks, they will refuse your visa application. Even if you have the money in your bank, even if you kept it for 28 days, if they cannot verify it with your financial institution, they will refuse your visa application. And what we found that quite often UKVI is unable to verify evidence from microfinance banks. So please, if your money is in one of the microfinance banks, do transfer it to a bigger bank. They're regulated by the financial authorities, keep it for the required period of time, and then use the evidence in support of your visa application. Do not move the funds the day after you submitted the visa application, please, because UKVI have the means and they are undertaking checks during the visa application process while you're waiting to arrive and at your arrival. And we've had the cases before where student arrives in the UK and UKVI asks about the money or says we've undertaken checks and the money that you used for your visa application is no longer there. And guess what the outcome of that interview is? So unfortunately, it's the immediate red flag for UKVI. They think that it's not your money, that you didn't move it to a different account, you've just used it for the visa application purposes, and they can turn you away. They can say, okay, we're canceling your visa and you're going back home on the next flight. We've come across of the instances where sometimes international student or seen the adverts online, the banks advertising or short-term loans, visa application loans. So make it looking it really enticing that you can borrow the money for a month or two, make your visa application, get the visa, and return the money. What I'd like to emphasize that please avoid these loans, because from UKVI point of view, from our point of view, this is fraud, this is deception. So you're borrowing the money to make the visa application. It's not your money. You don't intend to use it for studies, for living in the UK. So therefore, it should not be relied on at all. If you have an education loan, an official student loan, that's absolutely fine. There is a strict criteria for those loans and you can rely on them. But if it's the visa application loan, it's a no. And if we've come across evidence of that, if we come across a student who've used the short-term visa loan to make the visa application, then we are likely to withdraw our sponsorship and you will not be able to study with us. Okay, and it's a massive issue for your visa application as well, for your immigration history. So please avoid these. Okay, so you can, if you're officially sponsored by your government, university, you will need a sponsor letter with the details of your sponsorship, and you can rely on it in making your visa application. The university will need a copy of that letter because obviously the money to cover your course fees will come from your official sponsor. International company could be an official sponsor. However, unfortunately, UKVI doesn't have a very clear criteria what they think international company is. So they sometimes check whether the company has branches in different countries. They sometimes undertake some other checks, but the few instances that we had where international student was sponsored by the international company, UKVI did not accept that the company was international and the visa application was refused. So therefore, if you're not sure if the company that you're working for and who are sponsoring you are not international, they don't have branches, all over the world. So then what your employer could do is transfer the money to your personal bank account. You wait for the funds to mature, and then you make your visa application and then use those funds to pay the fees and your living costs. Okay, the amount. So if you're relying on your personal or your parents' personal financial evidence, the UKVI expects to see that you have enough money to cover the balance of your course fees and enough to live on for at least 9 months of your course, if your course is longer than 9 months. And so this is the minimum amount. It's okay to have more money. It's not okay to have less. And if your funds in a different currency, unfortunately, exchange rates fluctuate. And sometimes there are sudden fluctuations because something happens. You've noticed it in the last couple of years. So so it's important that if your money is in a different currency, that you have more than the minimum amount in your bank account. So then if there is a sudden drop in the exchange rate, that you show that you still have a minimum amount. The UKVI is not kind. They will not say, okay, it was exchange rate, so we're fine with that. Or if one day your balance is £10 less than the minimum, they will not accept it. It needs minimum or more. So therefore, I would strongly advise you to have more than a minimum, just to kind of, in case, to mitigate against any sudden drops in exchange rates. The minimum period of time is 28 consecutive days, ending with the date of the last transaction. So the bank statement itself has a life, so it cannot be any older than 1 month. So if you kind of think that if you are making your visa application, for example, on 28th of May, and the bank statement that you have should be issued any day between could be issued between 28th of May and 28th of April. So you make your application on 20th of May. When UKVI receives your bank statement, they check the date first. So has it been issued within the last months, between 28th of May and 28th of April? Tick. Then they'll see kind of the bank's name, bank's logo, your name, account number, another tick. And then they check the period. Does the statement cover 28-day period or more? Yes, another tick. What they do after that, they start from the kind of last transaction date, go down 28 days and check the balance on each day, that it hasn't fallen below the minimum. So that's why it's very important that if you're relying on your current account, on the account where transactions are going in and out every day, that you make sure that you have more than the minimum. So if a payment does come out of your account, it doesn't kind of bring the balance lower than the minimum. But I hope that what I'm saying makes sense. But please make sure that kind of you work out the minimum money you're required to have, then take into account the possible exchange rate fluctuations and make sure that the balance does not fall below that minimum, and keep the money in your account. I mean, you will need this money anyway. You will need it for your course fees. You will need it for your living expenses. So make sure that lump sum stays in that bank account throughout the visa application process, and then for you when you arrive here, so that you can use it to pay for course fees and all other things. Okay, so extra evidence. You may need to provide extra evidence with your financial evidence. So for example, if you're relying on your parents' bank statements, you'll need to provide a birth certificate that has obviously your name, your date of birth, and your parents' names. You'll need to provide a letter from your parents to confirm that you're their child, they're financing your studies in the UK, the University of Hull, and that they give you permission for you to access their funds. Any documents that are not in English need to be accompanied by the official translations. If you lost your birth certificate, if there are mistakes on the birth certificate, please, no affidavits, they are not accepted. Make sure that you apply for replacement birth certificate, that any errors are corrected, all the information is accurate. UKVI does undertake verification checks. They have intelligence that they can rely on, and it's very important that all the information is accurate. If you have friends, agents, or anyone say advising you, or don't worry, you can use the affidavit, or don't worry, just kind of do this to correct that, please, you can listen to them, but please don't act in the way that might be considered by UKVI as deception or false representation, because refusals based on deception or false representation could attract a visa ban, 1 year or 10 years visa ban. So it's not worth it. It's absolutely not worth it. So it's just worth to check the rules yourself, work out what you need to do, and prepare perfect visa application. Okay, so as mentioned before, sufficient funds must continue to be available throughout the visa application process, arrival, and for the whole period of your studies. Okay, thank you. But ready to move on, unless you have something else to add, Gavin.
Sorry, I was just looking at a question that had just come through. Sorry. Someone's put, I have one more question. Can you please tell me, did we have to show a bank transaction statement to get our study visa? That was sent through sort of a minute ago. I feel like you covered that, Olga, with what you said, but maybe worth reiterating.
Yeah, so if it's a savings account where transactions are not as frequent or not frequent, it needs to be clear to UKVI how long you've kept the money for. So if it's a savings account and it shows the date, for example, the money went in, so then the statement, obviously each country has different rules to bank statements, so I cannot really, the information I provide is kind of more relates to how UK issues their bank statements. But if you look at the savings, so it will show the money, that the date when the money went in and the date of issue. So if it is a savings account, you might need to kind of write to cover letter to clarify that this is the date the money went in, the statement was issued on this date, and it would help if the statement, for example, said opening balance, closing balance. And if it's a savings account, it should be clear that the kind of, if the closing balance is the same as the opening balance, that means that you haven't accessed the funds, so the amount is still the same. But if it's your current account where there are transactions coming in and out, then obviously your statement will show those, and then UKVI will kind of check the balance on each day of each transaction. So that's why it's important that you check yourself before submitting the statement, that you check yourself to make sure that it doesn't fall below the minimum. So I hope I've answered the question. And with savings account, the tip kind of that sometimes the students use, so the funds that you keep in savings account needs to be accessible immediately. Okay, if you can't access it, if you need to give a bank a notice, even if it's 24 notice to access the bank, it will not be acceptable. The funds need to be accessed immediately. But so if the savings account, you can kind of take the money out immediately, what is advisable to do. So for example, the lump sum went 2 months ago because you've been preparing to study in the UK. So before you request the bank statement, make a small transaction. So transfer, I don't know, the £10 worth of money from savings to your current account, or take it out. So then when you print the statement, it will show, so for example, the 20,000 went in on the 1st of February, 15th of May, when you print the statement, £10 were taken out, so the balance will be 20,000 less £10. So they'll see that within that long period, the balance have not dropped below the minimum. So it will make it easier for UKVI to kind of to calculate and to work out the period of time. But if you kind of look at your statement and think, how do I make it easy for the officer to assess my bank statement? If you make it easier for them, then there is less unlikely that they will contact you for further information, and unlikely that it will cause a delays. But if the statement doesn't provide clear information, then it might prompt them to undertake verification checks. It might cause a refusal if UKVI officer doesn't understand, kind of how to work out the minimum, or the minimum period of time, or the minimum period of funds. Were there any more finance questions, Gavin?
I think that there are more finance questions, but I think it's quite a sort of variety of them. I think we might need to get back to people on some of those.
Okay.
Talking about some of them talking about scholarships, using partners accounts, things like that. I think you've covered a lot of that, but I think we maybe need to provide specific responses.
Yeah, well, with partners, with dependents account, you can rely on your dependent financial evidence only if dependents are applying for their dependent visas at the same time as you're applying for your student visa. Okay. If your dependents are going to apply at a later date, you cannot rely on their financial evidence. So please, kind of the basic criteria, your personal bank statements, your parents' personal bank statements, official sponsor or educational loan. Okay.
Thank you. I'll move on.
Okay. So mentioned this already. So UKVI can invite you for credibility interview as part of the visa application process, or they can interview when you arrive to the UK. What we've seen last year, rather than arranging interviews, UKVI started sending emails asking the same information they would have wanted you to ask during the interview. So that's why it's important to be checking your answering the phone calls, because they might call you to give you details about the interview, and they will, once the date's been agreed, they will actually call you on the phone as well. And the information request, they'll send you the email requesting further information. The phone calls, if you receive a telephone call and somebody says that they're kind of UKVI official and asking you for personal information, please don't give the personal information to the person. Don't transfer any money to them if you don't know who is calling. If they're saying that you kind of from UKVI arranging the interview and you need to pay for it, this is not an official person calling you to arrange an interview. Ask them to send you an email with details about the interview. If you're in doubt, don't give any personal details. Ask them for their name, their number, and contact our team. Information requests, it will come from, you should see from the kind of the actual email address that it comes from UKVI. Again, if you're in doubt, forward the email to our team. But the UKVI usually gives, when they send information requests, they usually give 14 days to respond. So please check your emails, and if you're in doubt, forward it to us in good time. Don't send it to us on Friday morning and say my deadline is Friday afternoon, help, because we might not just physically, might not be possible for us to respond within the time frame given. So in preparation for credibility interview or information requests, so what you kind of need to consider is hopefully what you've already considered when you started thinking about studying in the UK and studying at this university. So kind of why you've chosen to study in this country at this university and why this particular course, how the kind of the course that you've chosen will enhance your career prospects, how it's kind of tied into what you've done before, your study history, your employment history, etc. It's probably be good to go back to your statement of purpose, to a personal statement, because all this information should have been on your statement, or hopefully in your personal statement already. The UKVI might also ask you about the funds, who is funding your studies, where the money is coming from, and especially, you know, kind of if you look at your bank statement, if there are lots of transactions, what UKVI sometimes, while they undertake the further verification checks, if they see that you didn't have any money and then suddenly there are kind of lump sum of money coming from all sorts of directions, they might doubt and they might want to undertake further verification checks. So think about your funds. The UKVI may want to know where the money is coming from. UKVI also, for them, if they do interview you, it's opportunity for them to check your level of English as well. So make sure the kind of if you are talking to the officer and there is a lot of interference on the line, or you don't understand the access of the kind of talking too quickly, make sure you tell them. Don't say at the beginning of in the interview, oh, everything is fine, and then say, yeah, everything is fine, no questions. And then when UKVI refuses your visa application and you say, oh, well, I didn't understand half of the questions because the line wasn't very clear, the UKVI will not accept it as an excuse, because they'll say, we asked you during the interview. And I know that sometimes you feel you don't want to say anything to them because you're worried that they'll use it against you. It's very, very important, if the line is not clear, if you don't understand the question, you tell them. You tell them during the interview. If you feel that there are any kind of issues with the interview or with the kind of quality of the signal, ask them for an audio transcript at the end of you should ask for the audio transcript anyway. Straight after the interview, write down from your memory the questions and the answers, because it's quite, if you don't write them down straight away, you might forget them, the following day. If you feel kind of unsure about the interview, contact our team straight after the interview so that we can provide you further guidance. Don't wait until the decision and then say, oh, by the way, there were problems. You have to kind of raise those concerns almost immediately or straight away. Okay, the other questions that the UKVI may want to ask you about is your previous refusals, if there are any gaps, if you kind of finished your education a few years ago and now kind of going back into it, they'll want to know why, what prompted you, kind of, is it your career or any kind of changes in personal circumstances. They'll ask you about the accommodation. Again, it's not necessarily that they're looking to see whether you've booked the accommodation. They want to know what preparations, what inquiries you've made. Do you kind of check the area, check the prices, kind of, and things like that. Some questions you might find really strange, like quite often UKVI ask, kind of, do you know how you will be getting to campus, bus, train, what are the kind of the prices for the train fare, bus fare? Those questions are unfair, and if you are asked about them, please arrangements in place, but you need to start thinking about it and making inquiries so that you can kind of let UKVI know that this is how kind of UKVI assesses whether you're a genuine student, whether you kind of what preparations you are making, what plans you have to make sure that kind of your kind of transitional process of coming here and kind of starting studies is as smooth as possible. Okay. Kevin, do you have anything to add?
No, I was just answering a question actually about someone asked, will all students have an interview with the UKVI? So saying no, not all students, but obviously, as you've already said, Olga, if a student is contacted by the UKVI, they will need to take part in that process. Otherwise, likelihood is it will be a visa refusal.
Yeah, and you might, if they're following the same process as last year, there will be more information requests than interviews. So please check. And the information requests, they'll ask you the same questions. They might ask you, what have you been doing in the last 5-10 years? So they'll be checking for the gaps, or who's kind of where the money comes from. They'll be checking for the sources of funds and so forth. But if you're not sure, if you receive information request, please contact our team if you're not sure where the email is coming from and what information is required. Okay, ready for the next one? Okay, so planning your arrival and dependence, all in one slide. We've kind of touched upon arrival. So the earliest time you can make the visa application is within 6 months of your visa start date. And obviously, you need to make sure that everything is ready for you to make. So if you're not ready within the 6 months of the start, then you don't make your visa application until you are ready. But whether you apply 6 months before the start date of your course or 3 months before the start date of your course, the earliest date you can arrive in the UK is 1 month before the start of your course, if your course is longer than 6 months. And it's very important that you arrive before the start of your course, before the latest enrollment date, because the longer if you've never studied in the UK before, you'll find the teaching methods, assessment methods, the study is different to what you're used to. The language, the environment, everything's different. So you'll need some time to adjust to the environment, to get used to new methods of teaching and assessment. So it's important that you arrive before the start of your course so that you're not missing anything, to make sure that it doesn't impact your academic progress. Get the accommodation. Once your visa been sorted. If you've started making inquiries about the accommodation, please maybe finalize accommodation for the first couple of weeks, so at least you know where you're going to stay while you're looking for your kind of more permanent accommodation. Plan ahead with kind of work out what you may need to pay when you arrive and make sure that you can access those funds as well. There is more information on our website about the arrival, and I'm sure the global engagement team colleagues will be reaching out to you with more information as well about it. The dependents. If you are studying at the postgraduate level and if your course is longer than 9 months, your dependents, your spouse and children that are younger than 18 years old can apply as your dependents. They will need to meet the immigration criteria for them to be granted dependent visa. The dependents can apply at the same time as you're applying for your student visa, or they can apply at a later date. Because if you university doesn't have family accommodation on campus or outside of the campus, and it's not always easy to find family accommodation near the university. So what you might want to do is obtain the visa for yourself, come to the UK, kind of settle in, check out, you know, where the schools, the nurseries are, check out the accommodation, arrange family accommodation, and then let your family join you, just to make sure that you don't end up with nowhere to live with you and your family when you arrive. Okay, so what else I wanted to mention about the dependents? The children, yes, children. The UKVI expects both parents to be in the UK when children are making dependent applications. There are some exceptions. So, for example, if you're a single parent and you've got kind of evidence that you have sole responsibility for your children, that would be accepted. But if your spouse is staying back home because they have job commitments, then UKVI is likely to refuse your children's dependent applications because they want to see both parents in the UK, and their rationale behind that is probably that they think if you're studying, then you know the other parent should be looking after the children. Okay, so I think that's about it about dependents. Are there any questions in the chat, Gavin? About
not what you say about dependents as such. There's a little bit about dependents and finances and things like that, but again, I think that may be something that we're going to have to just address separately with individuals.
I can answer. So dependents will also need to, if your dependents are applying with you at a later stage, at the moment the student needs to show that they have £1,023 per month for the next 9 months. Dependent needs to show £680 per month per each dependent for the next 9 months. So with 2 dependents, it's 680 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 9, and that sum of money needs to have been held in your bank account as well for the 28-day period. The immigration rules are subject to change, so depending when your dependents are going to make their visa application, the rules, the financial requirement might be slightly different. Okay. Ready for the next one?
I'm going to have a break
now.
As we mentioned right at the beginning, our team do help international students and applicants right throughout the journey. So before you get here, obviously now with the visa applications, you come and see us at enrollment, you get to meet our team. If there's any issues whilst you're studying, again, we can help you with that if you need to leave the UK for any reason. But obviously what we're aware of is that one of the key reasons that students are wanting to come to university at the moment is to then study on the graduate route to get that excellent opportunity at the end. So we are involved in that process with you again. So just a bit of background on the graduate route. I'm sure most of you are aware, but just in case, it is a one-off post-study work route. So when we say one-off, that means you can only apply for it once. So if you were coming to join us to do a master's, for example, in September this year, you could apply to do the graduate route at the end, as long as you successfully completed your course. If you then went on to do a PhD afterwards, you wouldn't be able to apply to do the graduate route again. So you can only ever apply for it once and be on the graduate route once. So you must be in the UK when you apply. You must still have a valid student visa. So you must do it when you finished your course, but before your visa expires. So you must have successfully completed the course, the degree course that your CAS was issued for. So, for example, if you come study a master's, but you don't achieve the master's level and you come out with a diploma or certificate, you wouldn't be eligible for the graduate route. You must get that master's. You must have paid all your tuition fees. You can't have anything outstanding that you still owe the university. You won't be able to graduate from the university if you owe tuition fees anyway, and you wouldn't be eligible for the graduate route visa. What actually happens to allow you to apply for it is that you will finish your course, your final bits of work will all be marked and your award will be confirmed. Assuming that you've successfully completed your course, you will then, the result will be made aware to our team. We will then notify the UKVI and say, this student has now completed the course and they're eligible to apply for the graduate route. We will then send you a message and say, we've told the UKVI that you've successfully completed your course. Now go ahead and make your graduate route visa application. We'll give you some guidance as to how to do that, but you really should wait to receive an email from us to confirm that we've done our bit that we need to do. If you go off and apply for the graduate route visa and we've not yet told the UKVI, it can have an impact on your application. It can cause delays. So we know that you're eager to transfer onto the graduate route visa, but please wait until you've had a message from us to say that it's ready. I know I'm talking about something that's going to happen in, potentially over a year's time, but we know that it's really important to students. So if you are studying at undergraduate level or master's level, the graduate route visa would be for 2 years. And if it's a PhD level, your graduate route visa would be for 3 years. We are aware there's been some sort of rumours that it might, the length of how long you'd be on the graduate route may change. I can tell you that as things stand at the moment, what we've just told you now is the case. Immigration rules are always subject to change. So by the time you complete your course, things may have changed. The length of time may have changed. However, information I've had, events that I've been to with the UKVI have suggested there's not any appetite to change that at the moment. But as I say, we don't know what the situation will be by the time you complete your course. But absolutely, for now, it's a 2-year route for undergraduates and master's students and 3 years for PhD students. We are sending out a recording of this webinar, and there'll be slides going out as well. So there are a couple of really useful links on this page, just in blue, on the government website and UKISA, which is an international student advice and guidance page. So please take the time to have a look at that. I know it's a way off, but keep this document and you've got it for future. Olga, anything?
Probably add information about dependents and graduate route visa. So obviously the immigration rules are subject to change, as Gavin mentioned. If the rules don't change, then the way it works for dependents, at the moment on the graduate route visa, if your dependents are here already on a student, as your student dependents, they can continue to apply as your dependents, sorry, when you apply for the graduate route visa. If your dependents are not here on dependent visas during your studies, unless the graduate route visa rules change, your dependents will not be able to join you once you switch into the graduate route visa. Will not be able to join you as dependents. They may be able to visit you in the UK as visitors, but not apply as your dependents. So therefore, if you're interested in the graduate route visa and providing it's still there, also kind of think about your dependents, if you have any, whether they will be applying to with you at the same time. during the summer or in April, May, or whether, you know, they'll be applying while you're still studying, maybe November, December time, once you kind of sorted the family accommodation and so forth. And regarding dependents and accommodation, if your dependents are going to come at a later date, and you will be looking for accommodation for yourself, if you're looking for a student accommodation, be mindful that your dependents will not be able to live or might not be able to live in the student accommodation. So therefore, kind of don't sign long-term contract, or check with the kind of your accommodation provider if your dependents will not be able to join you, you know, kind of would you be able to leave the contract earlier? If not, maybe look for a shorter term contract if you're thinking ahead about the dependents. Okay.
Thanks, Olga. Oops. Okay, so very nearly at the end now, pretty much on time. So in terms of what's next, you know, plan ahead, avoid delays. I've just seen a question in the chat to ask, can I start my visa application in June? The answer to that is you can, but obviously you need to have all of the documents ready. We don't want, as has been discussed at length in this webinar, we don't want people to start making visa applications when they're not ready just because they're in a rush and they want to try and avoid any rushes. Please only do it you could do your visa application now, but you must have the relevant documents ready. We've talked about finances. You need to have had you know, your statements ready for a minimum of 28 consecutive days. Please don't jump ahead and make visa applications when you haven't got those things in place, because it will be refused. But if you've got everything in place, you can start to make progress if you've got all your documents ready. And as I said, to avoid delays, if you make your application sooner when you're ready, then that's absolutely fine. As it says on there, just check your university information on our website in terms of policies. We've had questions about tuition fee, deposits, and who needs to pay it, who doesn't, do you get refunds? All of that information is available on our website with policies regarding that. We've talked about the immigration rules and how they're subject to change, but please make yourself aware of those. The UKVI gov.uk website, which we'll put links to, is really useful. So there is a lot of information in there about documents to provide. And speak to us as well, speak to our admissions team. If you've got, there's been quite a lot of questions about visa refusal, previous visa refusals for different countries. Should you, you know, will it affect it, your future applications, all that kind of thing. I can't answer all of those at the moment. However, what I would say is make us aware of them. Tell us what's happened, provide us the documentation if you've got documentation. You will be asked about it as part of your visa questionnaire. So please reach out to us and talk to us about those, and we'll help people on an individual basis. It's difficult to answer specific ones in a chat group. So please just make sure you're engaging with us. You speak to our admissions team, you're speaking to us, IECT, that's the International Engagement Compliance Team, and there's a couple of ways to contact us on there. As I said at the beginning, if you can try and raise a query in the portal, in the visa and immigration question, because that is how you will ultimately communicate with the university most when you arrive. So yeah, sort of get used to that and reach out to us through there. Olga, anything else?
Just to reiterate what you said, Gavin, the preparation is the key. Please prepare everything, make your application perfect, and then submit it. Regarding the kind of the previous refusals to other countries, if you've had them in the past and you provide the information, if you've been granted the visa since that refusal, please let us know as well, because that kind of, this is what UKVI will be looking at as well. Okay, you made a mistake, or whoever made a mistake, you've been refused, but since then you've got another visa somewhere else. That kind of helps to balance it a little bit as well. So, or any questions that you have, please raise inquiry in my whole portal, and our team will try and kind of guide you through the process.
Thanks, Olga. And what I would say is, I don't know if anyone can see this, but in the background I've had to put my blinds down because the sun is out in Hull at the moment. It's not particularly warm, but in terms of planning ahead, we are just about to head into summer, but when we get to enrolment time, every single year when we see our students arriving, they ask, we're talking September, beginning of October, students, a lot of the time our international students are taken with a little bit of shock at the cold. I can tell you now that's not going to be the coldest time of the year. So in terms of planning ahead, think of appropriate clothing as well. Despite what you might be able to see behind me, it is sunny, but it's not particularly hot. So just be ready for that in September. And that's it from us. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you for listening to us. We do look forward to meeting you in September. And as we said at the beginning, we haven't been able to answer all of the questions. We've done our best, but we will try and take those questions away and get back to you with some answers. So thank you very much. I'll hand over to Alex now, I think.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gavin and Olga, for that really thorough presentation, giving so much information all about the different types of things that you'll need to go through with your visa application process. It was fantastic. And as you say, unfortunately, we've not been able to answer all questions, as there was quite a few sort of more personal questions in there. But thank you to everyone who has submitted a question as well. What I would like to say is that we hope we're able to see you in September. Thank you for choosing the University of Hull. And I guess for the moment, we're right on time and we'll wrap that up there. So thank you so much, Gavin and Olga, for that presentation. I'll say goodbye now, and if you guys also want to say goodbye.
Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for your patience, and yeah, it's good to know that most of you are still here. Let's say goodbye. So looking forward to seeing you in September or August.
Yeah, you can come in August as well, and we'll get you enrolled early and get your BRP early. Don't worry about that. Okay, we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, Alex. Bye.